As entrepreneurs, we understand the roller coaster of emotion that comes with bringing a business to life.
Most of the reason that companies fail is because the founder doesn't get out of the way of the growth of the company.
The reality is, whether you're building a company or scaling your side hustle, there's no way to completely avoid the chaos.
Everybody wants to be in an environment of control and not chaos.
Now, balance that with your personal life, that's where it gets even harder.
Your business is something that you need to pour into like a relationship.
Get the answers from top business leaders, authors, founders, and productivity experts so you can organize the chaos in your business.
There's no such thing as common sense. There's only documentation.
Welcome to Organize Chaos, the show where you can take a page out of business leaders' playbooks with me, your host, Chris Ronzio. Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for joining me on Organize Chaos Live. Today, we're going to do things a little bit differently. Today is just going to be a Q&A kind of catch-up session. I get a lot of questions from all of you on social media, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on YouTube, and I'd love to take some time to answer those questions and really just get caught up on some of the most pressing questions and stories that you'd all like to hear about. So I've got some questions I'm going to go through, but really this week, Tuesday that we're recording this, kicks off what we call at Traul our quiet week. So I wanted to take a minute and just talk a little bit about what is the quiet week, how do we treat it, and maybe how can this apply to your business. So if you're listening to this after the fact, we're recording this the day after the 4th of July here in the US. It was a holiday. We had Monday off. It was a long weekend for everyone. And historically, this week has always been kind of a slower week. Like we come off the long weekend and people are just kicking off their Q3 initiatives. And so it really tends to be heads down time. And so a few months ago, we had taken some feedback from the team that they wanted time to catch up. They wanted time to not be working on the next product sprint, on the next release, on their regular meetings that they had. They just wanted some heads down time. And so we thought, okay, this is a great time to try that because this is what ends up happening this week a lot of years anyway. So we dubbed this week Quiet Week, which really just means no regular meetings. So I'm curious if you have any kind of weeks like that, or if you treat any days of the week like that. I'd love to hear more in the chat because I think we can have a good discussion around how you can systematically program your week or your year to allow spaces for this kind of time to catch up, to put your head down, and to get some important things done. And so for us at Traul, again, this is a week for people to not have their regular meetings and just to look through their backlog of tasks and projects and think, what is the most important stuff that I can do to get done right now? And for some people, that might be taking time off. For some people, they might just want to unplug, knowing that they're not going to miss any meetings, and that's totally fine. So we wanted to have that space in people's calendars where they could decide, is this heads down mode for me to just catch up and get a lot done? Or is this unplug mode for me to come back recharged and ready to go for Q3? So that's how we set up this week. So for me, this is the first thing I'm doing to kick off the week, to catch up on a lot of these questions that you've had and that you've sent to me. So I'm going to take some time to go through these questions, but if you have any new questions, any Q&A, anything about organizing the chaos in your professional or personal life, anything about me or Traul that you're just interested in knowing, please put it in the comments here and I will get to it live. But for now, I'm going to kick things off and get started through the backlog of questions that I had, starting with one from Mallory Glessner. Hey, Mallory, thank you so much for commenting and being such a great contributor over here. So as someone who's very organized, how do you effectively work on projects and efforts with others who are much less organized without feeling like you have to fill in their gaps to keep things running smoothly, essentially creating a crutch? So when I read this question, it takes me back to being in high school or being in college and having those team projects. And whenever you get assigned those team projects, there's usually one or two people who tend to kind of pull the weight of the team. You know, they're doing all the work in advance. They're doing the hard parts of the assignment. And then you've got other people who are just showing up and collecting the grade. So maybe you've been there too. That was my experience, at least. So in business, you know, especially when you're running your own business, first, you get the advantage of being able to pick your teammates. And so I think it's really important to pick other people in your company that have the same sort of drive and ambition and hopefully at least a level of communication and accountability that we're looking for, even if everyone is not the most organized person on the planet. I remember when I first started college, my first college roommate, shout out Mike if you're listening, was less organized than me. You know, my side of the room would be very polished. His side of the room would have, you know, shirts and towels and whatever, just kind of like piled up on the chairs and the bed. And you could totally tell. It was like there was tape down the middle of the room, and you could tell that that this is two different people that live here. So in business, you also have some people that are just less organized. That's not their type A personality, or that's not their propensity to just have everything very orderly. And that's okay as long as they're pulling their weight. So unlike that, student in your project that just isn't showing up, isn't contributing, isn't doing anything, that doesn't fly in business. But as long as people are contributing and doing their part, I guess this question is saying, do you need to have one person that's kind of the glue that holds everything together? Well, for me, I think if you are not that person, you need to have someone on the team that is that person, someone that is the project manager for anything important that needs to get done. Because a project manager is definitely the glue that holds things together. And so I would say at the beginning of any project that I'm working on or that you're working on, it would be important to identify who is the one that's going to lead this project, that will manage the project, that will keep track of the deadlines, that will hold the rest of the team accountable. And that doesn't have to be me. It used to be me, for sure. When we were much smaller, that was me. And to some extent, it still is me with holding our team members accountable for our big quarterly initiative, my direct reports. But on any project in a company, you're going to have people that are more organized and less organized. So just distinguish who is the project manager, what are the ground rules for how we're going to run this project so that everyone stays on track. And I think if you do that, you can have a team that runs a lot more functionally. So same with meetings. If you have meetings in your company, distinguish who is the person that is going to take the notes, who is the person that's going to post the summary or the action items from this meeting, who is the person that's going to lead the agenda and facilitate and make sure we stay on time. It could be the same person. It could be multiple people. When I'm in my forum meetings for my YPO group, and before this, when I was in an EO group, there were actual positions in the group that you would be like the timekeeper or the scribe or something like that, and make sure that the meeting stays on track. You would do the parking lot and make sure that you're writing any discussion topics that need to come out. So same thing when you're in a company, have those designated positions. Not everyone has to be the most organized person, but if you have an organized person, have them lead the project, have them lead the communication, and then balance the workload across the others so that they're not doing that on top of all of the other work. So great question, Mallory, but I don't think anyone needs to be that crutch. I think they can just play their role on the team and use their organized superpowers to help the team run smoother. Okay. Next one's from Darian Parker. How much do you let a process mature before documenting it? Just so you don't end up with a bunch of established procedures that were built by OCD first timers, but that doesn't scale. So how much do you let a process mature? Good question. And I think the way I would think about this one is, if you have only done it a couple times, if you have never seen the process work in the real world, or you've only seen it work a limited number of times, then you haven't actually seen that process is repeatable. And so the framework that I use, do it, document it, delegate it, starts with doing it over and over and over again. So it's very consistent. And so typically the person that writes down the process is the person that has been doing it repeatably over and over again, the same way, every day, multiple times a day, multiple times a week, whatever it is. They're doing that process and they've proven that it works. And now to hand that off, to delegate it to someone else, now is the time to document it. And so documenting should not be a forward-thinking kind of business plan that you hope these things scale. Documenting is done when you're at the point that you need to hand off a responsibility to someone else because you need to free up enough bandwidth for you to do other things. And if that's the case, you should have a repeatable way of doing the thing. And so whether it's done 5 times or 500 times? I guess depends a lot on the exact procedure, on the task. In a business that has something that's very transactional, that you're just doing, it takes 5 minutes. Like with my first business, we were packaging DVDs. So thousands of times a month, we would be putting a paper cover into a plastic DVD sleeve. We'd be printing out a DVD and putting the right art on it, putting them together, closing it up, putting it in the shipping envelope, looking up the customer's address, putting it through the verification system, printing out the address label, slapping that on the front, putting the paid postage on there, and putting it in the bin. And so we had this process that we would do over and over and over and over and over again. And really, it didn't occur to me to document and hand that off until I had done it thousands of times myself. And I was so good at doing it that I could almost do it with my eyes closed. And so in that case, I just didn't need to pass it off yet because I wasn't ready to scale, or I wasn't ready to take on the new responsibility. But once you feel like you're just bored of a certain task, like you're doing it in your sleep with your eyes closed over and over again, that is a mature process. And so where is that line between zero and a mature process? It's going to depend for your business, but I would say it has to be something that is done consistently, that's proven in the real world before you're starting to document it and write it down and hand it off. And now that said, anytime you hand a process off to someone else, it should be up to them. They should be empowered to improve that process, to make it better. And so if they start to poke holes in something that was maybe prematurely documented, then scrap the instructions, start figuring out the better way to do it. And now you've just kind of handed off the experimental phase of doing this task to a new person. So you're not really gaining much by giving a proven process to someone. It's kind of like if you're building a brick wall and you just took that brick off with the wet cement and started over, but maybe you weren't the right person to figure that thing out, and that's okay too. So just know that the time to document and create a documented, proven process is once you've seen it work in the real world. Maybe once that cement is turned hard, in my analogy. All right, next question is from Isaiah. Isaiah, love messaging with you on LinkedIn. Labrose, I hope I'm saying your last name right. How did you know when it was time to create Trainual? Was it something that you noticed in the market while consulting? I love learning why. So the backstory with Trainual is, I had been running my own business at this point, 23 years. So I guess at that point it was probably 15, 16 years. And when I was doing this in my own company, I never thought of a tool for this. I was kind of cobbling together, WordPress, password protected sites and Google sites and documents and YouTube videos. And all of that stuff was how I made this work in my first business. And so when I moved on to consulting in my second business, I was going company to company to company. And I saw that every company had a desire to be turnkey. That was a big phrase back then. You wanted to automate your business. You wanted everything to just be turnkey. And everyone's businesses had a sort of recipe to them, like the way things work. And so the initial idea for Trainual was, well, what if I just had something proprietary for my consulting business? Like, this is what I love doing. I love packaging together how people's businesses work. Let me just make a tool, a proprietary tool for my consulting work. And so the way that it started was there was a group of students that I've met locally in Arizona where I live, and they were working on this student project of an HR onboarding tool. So they didn't have any customers, any paying customers, but they had this kind of like proof of concept. And when they graduated, I said, hey, why don't we partner up? How about I come in and as a partner, as an affiliate on this tool? They had all moved on to other businesses, other ideas. They were moving to Silicon Valley, and they were kind of abandoning this tool. So I ended up purchasing the code base to this tool and then hiring some contract developers on the side that could help me turn it into what I was thinking was Trainual, the small business training manual that I had in my mind. And so I took their tool, which was really just like a way to invite people in and take them through steps of onboarding. And I started to design it around the roles and responsibilities that someone had in a business. And how do you flesh out a full orientation? And I came up with the name Trainual, it's a training manual. Put a little bit of effort, a little bit of money into this tool. And in early 2015, I had a prototype that I was able to launch to my consulting clients. And so I thought I was going to be some kind of software mogul from day one. Like, you can even look up in the archives on my blog, chrisronzio.com, when I announced this thing and I said, I'm launching a software company. It's pretty funny to look back on, but I ended up getting 3 sales. So I got 3 people, 3 of my consulting clients to buy this thing. And it was not the windfall that I was expecting. And so over the next few years, Trainual was this thing that kind of sat on my shelf. It was there. I was giving it for free to my consulting clients. And I was slowly starting to think about how could this product be a mass market kind of tool. And so at the same time, I'm in all these groups, entrepreneurs organization and startup groups, and I'm trying to figure out how to make my own business scale. I started hiring consultants, other consultants in other cities to do the consulting work that I was doing. And I used Trainual as the tool to train them. And so then something clicked. And I thought, this tool shows other people how to do things. And I thought back to my video business and how I could build on this tool. I started collecting feedback from my consulting clients, and I just really started getting excited about it. I got all my employees in my consulting business excited about it, and we decided to take a chance on it. And so that was kind of the way that it happened. It was very organic. It was not that I noticed something in the market and put everything down and started working on this software product to change the world. It was that I was consulting and day by day learning and experiencing new businesses and new industries, and little by little just really understanding how every entrepreneur wants to package together what they do in a more tangible way and create that playbook, and how it's the playbook that empowers your people to really own their role and own what they do in the business. And so as those layers kept getting peeled back and I was seeing it more and more clearly, I got more and more excited until it was 2018 that we finally made the burn the ships and went for it, tried to make the software company. Thanks, Isaiah, for that question. All right, Brandy Lawson, how have you found a schedule or rhythm for work and rest that works well for you and or your team? This is something we're experimenting with and would love to hear insights on what is working for others. So I think the schedule and rhythm for work and rest is a really personal thing. So what works for me is not necessarily going to work for you or for the other people on my team or your team. So I think it's important that each person figure out what their rhythm is. We have a policy of great flexibility at Trainual because we want everyone to be able to some extent, set their own hours. And as long as they're overlapping and having reasonable amounts of collaboration time with their other team members, we want them to do what works best for them. So if you're a morning person, work early. If you're a night person, work late. If you've got family commitments during certain hours, work around those commitments. That's totally fine as long as you're getting your work done and showing up balanced and ready to work. So for me personally, I work about an 8 to 5 day is kind of like a normal day for me, sometimes 8 to 4. I am up usually at 5:30 or 6. I work out in the morning. So I do like a run or a hike or a bike ride or swimming sometimes. I don't love swimming, but when I'm training for a race, I do that. And that time allows me to listen to podcasts and just get my mind straight, think about what I want to accomplish for the day. So it's really important time for me. I spend time with my kids in the morning. I've got 2 young kids, making sure that I have some kind of fun interactions with them, or I help with their breakfast and seeing them off for the day. And then I plug in 8 to 5 and get my work done. So now the actual work I'm doing varies day by day by day. So in a normal week, Mondays and Thursdays are my internal meeting days. That helps me stay heads down and there for my team, preparing for any internal meetings that I've got, all my one-on-ones, all our team meetings, the all hands meeting. Those are Mondays and Thursdays. Tuesdays and Wednesdays tend to be external days or just project days or blocks of work sessions. And then Friday for me tends to be a lot of content creation or press, or if I'm going to take an afternoon off or something, I would do it on a Friday. And so Fridays are sort of those flex days. So I try to arrange my week schedule and my day schedule to accommodate me and make sure that I feel like I've got the most energy to get the most work done. And then I unplug and can be there for my family. That might be different for you. So Brandy, I'm curious to hear what works for you, and put it in the comments if you're listening, or message me on LinkedIn. That's what works for me. All right, next question here from Amy Rourke Jones. I would love to learn more about how do we sell the value of more efficient training to our boards and executives. I work in marketing and our team is growing, at least as it is across departments, but that is sometimes a difficult transition. Okay, so let me summarize this one for Amy. How do we sell the value of training to our boards and executives? How do you convince the rest of your team that training is a good idea? Well, I think there's a quote. I want to say it's a Henry Ford quote, but it's a quote that says, "What's worse? What's worse than not training our employees, or what's worse than? Gosh, let me get this right. What's worse than not training our employees? No, what's worse than training our employees and having them leave?" That's the quote. Because you put all this energy into people and then they leave and they're gone. Well, what's worse than training our people and having them leave? Not training them and having them stay. Like, we should all be investing in the professional development of our people because we all want to see that ROI on our payroll expenses improve. We all want to get a better return and a better output for the people on our teams. And so how else do you do that except investing and showing those people the best possible ways to do things? And so internal training, teaching people how you do what you do, gets them up to speed faster for new employees that start on the team. It's kind of like insurance against anybody transitioning out and taking on a new role because it's easier to backfill and get the new person up and running. And then it improves productivity, it improves profitability across all of your people, because you might have people on the team that are doing things inconsistently and your profits are just kind of slipping out the cracks because people are not doing things the optimal way. And so if you don't have executives or a board that appreciates profitability, productivity, professional development, then I would say it's more of a cultural, organizational problem. People working at the business shouldn't have to convince someone that in order to scale effectively, we need to invest in these things. So I would make sure that you're crystal clear, giving that feedback that how are we trying to scale? What are the goals for this business? Are we going to do that with a large number of people? Are we going to bring more people in here? Do we need to get more out of our existing people? Like, start to have that why conversation and use that to frame the what, which is investing in more internal training. That's how I would focus on this. All right. Looks like the next question here is from Chris Gwynn. I'm interested in learning more about your consulting days at Organized Chaos. What were some of the biggest challenges you experienced and conquered when building that company? And then follow up, did you experience the same challenges when building Trainual? Let me think back. So initially when building Organized Chaos, so of course the name of this show, this podcast, but also the name of my consulting firm. It didn't even have a name at first. Consulting for me, it was a bridge between my first company and whatever I was going to do next. And I didn't know how long I would be a consultant. I didn't know if it would be 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, but I knew I loved the idea of learning. I had this curiosity of getting to know people's businesses, and I just wanted to roll up my sleeves and be helpful. From running my company, I was pretty resourceful. I had been a bootstrapped entrepreneur. I was very operations minded. And so it was just fun. It was like a playground to be let into other people's businesses. And so at first it wasn't like really challenges that I was experiencing. It was like this euphoria, like people are letting me just play in their businesses. I kind of get, access to talk to anyone and to do anything and to just make their business better. That felt so cool. And that's what I was focused on at the beginning. So the initial challenge that I hit was I just enjoyed doing this so much. So how do I monetize it? I had a couple of friends, a friend I went hiking with this past weekend, actually, that was one of my first clients and just kind of invited me into his business. And we agreed on a rate for the month that would be appropriate for me to come to his business once a week. And that was how it started out, was just this, let me come in once a week, pay me this like $1,000 a month, and let me just talk to all of your people and figure out ways that I can be helpful. And of course, the clock is ticking. I've got to prove some value, but I did really shortly. I started helping project manage things that needed somebody's attention. I started investigating new software tools that could make them more efficient, help them post jobs on Craigslist and Indeed, and get some new people in the door. And I was just enjoying the business. But quickly it became, well, how do I scale this? How do I take on more clients? Because I started to spread myself thin. I started taking on, a third business, a fourth business, a fifth business. And all of a sudden, I feel like I've got 5 bosses that are texting and calling and emailing me at all hours of the day. And so that became my issue. How do I manage this? And so I restructured the company to say, I will only do half day or full day sessions. And you could buy a number of packages. You could buy a one-time project. You could buy a retainer, a monthly retainer at a 1 day a week level or at a 2 day a week level. And I started selling those until my schedule was full. And I would sell 4 days a week for the month. I would keep 1 day open for my administrative work. And I did that until I had so much administrative work that I needed to hire a second employee. And I brought on Chelsea, who some of you have heard of, to start to manage all these projects and manage the billing and manage the proposals. And then we brought on another person, and slowly the business started growing. But at the beginning, it was, how do I monetize this? How do I manage my time? And I think that's the hardest part when you're selling billable hours as a consultant to get right. And then it starts to be about business development. Once your organization grows to the point that you've got a good lead flow, you've got referrals, you can sustain yourself, you need business development that can consistently bring you leads and new customers if you're going to start taking on the overhead of other people. And so for me, that started to be investing in sponsorships. I sponsored chapters of the entrepreneur organization. I started making content, shooting videos. I started writing a newsletter. I wrote this newsletter once a week, just recommending software tools to solve problems in your business. And after a few years, I had thousands of subscribers to this newsletter list, and I would get consulting inquiries from that list. And so it starts to become about new business. And that was my next challenge. So transitioning into Trainual, that was the challenge. It was like I was getting cold prospects to call me and ask for consulting services. And then I would charge $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000 or something like that. How do you get enough cold prospects to be able to charge them $50 a month and support an army of team members in a growing software business? That's very different. So the challenge was similar. It was new business development, but the way that we did it was very different in terms of volume digital advertising, getting messages out on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, shooting story ads. And that was a learning curve for the first 6 to 12 months of Trainual with my brother, Jonathan, and me. So similar challenges: organize yourself, your time, how you bill, your pricing models, how you manage your clients. And then you start to bring on other people. There's the challenges of being a good boss and casting a vision for their future. But then it's really new business development. And I think that is the thing that stops most businesses from getting above that $1 million mark. If you can't consistently bring in new leads and you can't repeatably service those leads and be getting more by turning the dial up, it's really hard to get above that level. Some companies do it just brute force, but then you can just, peter out a little bit. And so investing in new business development was the biggest challenge. All right. Next question here. Let's see. Susie Pinon. I hope I'm saying that right. How do you suggest young professionals get seen by recruiters when the majority of screening happens through AI? So I don't think a ton of screening at small companies happens through AI. So the distinction I would draw here is that, yes, if you're applying to big enterprises, and these enterprise kind of companies have thousands and thousands and thousands of applications, they're probably deploying some kind of artificial intelligence to do a screening process. And so how I would get around that is, rather than just being, one of 1,000 numbers or resumes, I would find some connection, establish some connection at the company, someone that you can meet, talk to, get advice from, understand how they operate at this company, what they value at this company, because you want a person, an advocate for you, a champion in that business. A lot of times people will get introduced to me and just tell me that they put an application in. I'll send a note to our people ops team and say, hey, for what it's worth, this person that I trust a lot is advocating for this applicant. That is a real way to do it. And so if you can create a personal connection, that is the best way, I think, to get around any kind of AI, is to have someone on the inside looking out for you, someone making an introduction so that your name gets bounced around a few times. Otherwise, for young professionals, I think there's a lot of basics of how you can just make your profile stand out, particularly on LinkedIn, which is like everyone's resume or business card these days. If you can, get some professional headshots taken for your photo, if you can write up a little bio about what your superpowers are, what do you just go to work and love? What is an amazing day at work for you? Try to be vibrant, or get someone to help you put that together. Make sure that you've got all your different experience listed on there. Engage with other posts, like things, post things yourself. Then you're not just a name, you're a personality. And I think that when we're hiring and when we're looking at people's profiles, the ones that shine through on the screen are the ones that seem to have a personality. They've got purpose, they've got passion, they've got professionalism, they've got the communication. And if you can put all of those things into your profile online, it's a good indicator that you're going to do that to things offline, to the projects that you're working on. So I know that could be basic or some low-hanging fruit, but that's a really easy way. The next would be, instead of just putting in your application, put some extra effort. Shoot a video. Say, this is who I am, and this is why I'm perfect for this role. A lot of times with recruiting and applications, I think it gets a bad rep for just this volume play. You have so many applications coming in. That's why a company would employ an AI tool, is because they need to screen the applications, because they're getting inundated with applications. And so if you can be creative and you can go around that by saying, I don't know where to turn this in, there was no field for this, but I wanted to send this video because I'm so interested in your company, I love what you're doing. That again sets you apart, because people can't put that in the box. They don't know where to put that video, so they send it around to people on their team, and you get noticed. I remember the first internship I ever applied for was because I read an article in, I think it was Entrepreneur Magazine. I read this article about this local company that was doing innovation consulting, which seems so cool to me. And I found the quote in that article. I sent it in to the people, and around their job application, I used the email address and I sent it in, and I said, I just want to let you know, I thought that this quote was really profound, was really interesting. I had no idea that this industry was even a thing. I've looked into some of your clients and it seems incredible. I would love a way to work here. Do you offer any kind of internships over the summer? And then I got a real person emailing me back and say, why, actually, yeah, we do. Thank you so much for reading that and noticing it. Let me know when you send in your application. I'd love to take a look at it. Again, it's creating real connections. And that's how you get around AI. That's how you get noticed, I think, at any size company. All right. Let's see. Yitzchak Glantz. I hope, again, I'm saying that right. One of the hardest parts of a growing business, which causes a lot of stress, is managing resources, hiring new talent when you're getting new clients, and being able to do it quickly. What advice can you give people for a business that is growing too fast? Well, first of all, congratulations. I would say most companies out there in the world would kill for that problem. Like, what do I do? I'm growing too fast. Like, everybody wants to give us money. So just pat yourself on the back, because that is a great problem to have. When you're growing really fast and you need to hire more people because you need to be able to fulfill more work, then you know more than anyone else that you have to invest in a way to do this systematically. And so chances are right now, you're just kind of keeping your head above water and trying to get that next person in, trying to show them what to do so that they can get the work done and hit the ground running. What I would suggest is, for that next person that you bring in manually, either you do one of two things. One, you hire an extra person prematurely. Now, if you are growing at the speed you say you're growing, hiring 2 people prematurely is actually an investment to get ahead of that a little bit. And this is assuming you feel very confident that you can get the work in. Hire an extra person prematurely, take both people through that process, and then have that person with the extra bandwidth dedicate some of their time for the first month or two while they have that extra bandwidth to documenting, writing down the process. Because if they can create the instructions, the training for something that they just went through, they're helping the next person. They don't have to be a pro at this. They just need to fundamentally be able to write down the basics or record the basics of, you're training me on how to do this thing. Let me go take the extra time to write down those instructions. And then they can cross-check it with you or the other person that's getting right into the client work. So that would be one suggestion, is hire an extra person sooner. The other would be to just record everything that you're doing. Set up a camera in the room when you're training someone. Record the Zoom calls or the Google calls, whatever it is, if you're doing this virtually. The instructions that you're giving somebody verbally, write them down, send them through an email instead. And then as long as you're capturing this material, then you can hire someone outside your business to start to create that orientation program for you, to document your training. Because again, if you can save yourself the one-to-one time of explaining this over and over and over again, then you're going to get that instant ROI as you bring in the second and third and fourth and fifth person into the business. And so a business that's growing fast, more than anyone, needs to invest in writing this down, because you don't want to waste your time more and more and more. A business that's, the faster you grow, the more time you'll waste by not having this program in place. And I'm not just saying that biased from Traul's standpoint. I'm saying it as a peer from someone who's been growing fast and had fast growing companies in the past. All right, Carter. Carter Wright says, if you could talk to your younger self and give one piece of advice when you started your first company, what would that be? I would say think much bigger. So let me try to think up an example. But the reason I say think bigger is, well, I'll use my first company actually. So in my first business, we started doing these youth sporting events, and they started with cheerleading and dance events. And we would find these local events, I'd see a flyer or something, or the local high school, and they would have, a few hundred people that would come in attendance. We'd sell a few $100s in videos. And as a kid, that seemed incredible. But I didn't realize that when you film an event, when you film an 8-hour event, it doesn't matter if there's 300 people in the stands or 100,000 people in the stands. You have to put the same amount of effort into filming that 8-hour event and editing the video. And so it wasn't until much later in the business that we started getting these bigger and bigger events and being able to make more and more money. Instead of making $400, we'd make $40,000 at an event. And so my advice to my younger self would be, think about that earlier. Go bigger. Once you understand how to do something, go for bigger deals. And so where does that apply for your business? I'm not sure what kind of company you have, but it was the same with my consulting business. We went from, charging $1,000 a month in a retainer kind of thing to being able to charge, $15,000 for a couple of days and do a workshop style product. And so you need that experience to go bigger, but I would have been a bit more proactive around the vision of where I wanted to get to. And I think I kind of let that unfold year by year, because I was only slowly running into other businesses or seeing what other people were doing. So I probably would have been a lot more intentional. Maybe it would be easier today with social media and all the examples that people have today to look up to. But that would be my advice to my younger self. And then other advice that I've given in the past, one of my mentors, Scott Fritz, always said, your network is your net worth. And I don't know if he made that up, that may be a cliche thing, but the people that you meet and surround yourself with really have an impact on your trajectory. And so I would continuously try to put myself in the company of the best people I could. All right, I'm scrolling through the list. I think we hit a lot of big questions here. I'm gonna hit on one more. Let's see, common misconceptions about startups. So common misconceptions. One common misconception would be that startups always happen when people are in college eating ramen and and staying up 24 hours a day and that sort of thing. Trainual as a startup was built out of a very profitable multi-million dollar consulting firm that I was running, and I had two kids. My second child was born right when I was launching Trainual, and so you don't have to be a poor college student on ramen and spaghettios, to make a startup. And so I think it gets kind of glamorized in that way, romanticized maybe in that way. But anyone can start a business. Anyone can make their own leap into starting their company, whether you do it full-time, part-time, whether you're investing your savings, whether you're getting others, friends to come in. I think you can do it at any time. So that's one misconception. Another one I would say is that all tech startups are investor funded. That's a misconception. We didn't take funding for our first 2 years, and it was totally bootstrapped, and I didn't know any differently. I'd never raised money from investors in the past. I didn't know what it took to raise money. Shark Tank helped. I will say watching Shark Tank helped, but other than that, I didn't have any experience raising money. And I think a lot of people just assume that tech businesses are all funded in that way. Other misconceptions, maybe that the culture is just a hustle kind of culture and go, and you totally sacrifice work-life balance. I mean, from the beginning, we had 401k matching and health insurance and invested in team events and culture, and maybe we're not the norm, but I think that great businesses need that stable foundation. And so you don't have to just burn the candle at both ends and burn your people out and create this toxic culture just to get things done. So there's a lot of good about the startup stereotypes. You do have to have that work ethic, that drive, that passion, the belief that you're making the world a better place. You do have to be infectious and charismatic and be able to lead people and show them that this is something that's worth their time as they're joining your team. But you don't have to have all the money in the world. You don't have to create a bad culture, and you don't have to create something that's extremely revolutionary. People have been doing what we're doing for years and just cobbling together different tools. There's other tools that have existed and have gone out of business, and so I think it's less about creating a business that's never been thought of, never been done before, but it's more about executing and every day showing up, having the discipline to run the business so the business succeeds. And that's what turns a startup into a scale up. All right. So with that, I'm going to wrap this up. This has been fun. I really appreciate all of these questions. Like I said, this is a catch-up week for me, for most people at Trainual. And so I wanted to catch up on a lot of great questions that I'm getting from all of you. I so appreciate you tuning in and joining me for the little daily lessons that I share, for the weekly interviews. If you're not already a subscriber to the podcast, check it out. Organize Chaos. Look it up wherever you get your podcasts. And we do these live installments every couple of weeks here on LinkedIn. So next time I'm here live, please join on, ask a question, share your thoughts, share your comments. I'm doing this for you. I really appreciate you all. Thank you.